Okay, stop scrolling for just a second.
Yeah.
Before we even open the virtual cover of today's book, I need you to do something for me. Right now.
Yeah, right now.
Hit that like button and subscribe to the show. I am serious. Because the kind of stuff we are talking about today is the definition of unfiltered.
Truly.
It is the kind of raw biological reality that, usually gets buried by the algorithm because it makes people uncomfortable. So if you want to keep getting these deep dives, you have to signal to the machine that you are actually listening.
That is right. Today, well, it is definitely not our usual fare. We are going completely off-road.
We really are. We are diving into a book called Ancient Medicine. The subtitle is Herbs, Diet, Fasting, Trepanation, Bloodletting, Medicines, Abortifacients, Alcohol, and Entheogens.
Quite the list.
Right. It is by Conrad Reicher. And look, when I first saw this title, I thought I was picking up a dusty history textbook about medieval doctors and garden herbs.
Sure.
I figured we would learn about rosemary and maybe how they set a broken bone in the year 1300.
Yeah.
But I was so wrong.
You were very wrong. This is not a history book. It is a manifesto.
It reads exactly like a forbidden manual.
Yeah.
Riker explicitly says in the preface, and I'm quoting here, "You are holding a book that should not exist."
Yeah.
He calls modern men pill-gobbling eunuchs and NPC zombies. I mean, the guy comes out swinging a sledgehammer. He is not trying to make friends here.
No, he's not. And that aggressive tone is actually part of his whole diagnosis. Riker is not writing a health guide for the average person who wants to lower their cholesterol by 2 points.
Right.
He is writing for what he calls the red-pilled man. His core argument is that the modern world, specifically the medical and institutional complex, has declared an open war on male biology.
It is intense. He talks about how medicine has been captured by feminized institutions and Marxist ideologies. Basically, if you've ever gone to a doctor and felt like they were treating you like a broken woman instead of a functioning man, this book is shouting that you are right. And look, we can only cover so much in this conversation. If you want the full arsenal, you need to go to Amazon Kindle or Google Play Books right now and buy this ebook. It is dense with protocols we just cannot fit into this deep dive.
So let's unpack the core premise before we get into the leeches and the fasting. Riker's central thesis is that modern medicine has undergone this catastrophic shift. It moved from a patriarchal model to a gynocentric model.
Okay, let's pause right there.
Yeah.
So those are heavily loaded terms. What does he actually mean by a patriarchal medical model?
He means a model based on conquest, discipline, and outcomes. In the ancient world, the body was something to be mastered. It was literally a tool for war.
Okay.
The physician was like a mechanic for a tank. The gynocentric model, which he argues we live in right now, is prioritized around comfort, safety, and feelings. It views the body as fragile, something that needs constant protection and validation.
So instead of fixing the actual problem, we are focusing on how the problem feels.
Exactly. He argues that modern medicine demands compliance. You just outsource your health to a lab-coated bureaucrat. His mission with ancient medicine is to help the listener reclaim biological sovereignty, to stop being a patient and start being a general.
Becoming the general of your own biology. I really like that image, but let's see how it holds up. Let's get into the first big section here, which is medicine as war. Riker has this line that the body wasn't designed for mindfulness apps.
Right. He says your body was forged in fire, famine, and war. It was not designed for safety. It was designed for survival in completely hostile environments.
Yeah.
And this leads him to attack what he calls the gentle healer myth. We have this idea today that healing is soft. It is nurses in pastel scrubs, soft voices, empathy, holding your hand.
But surely empathy is a good thing in medicine. I mean, you do not want a doctor who does not care if you die.
Riker argues that care has been completely redefined. He looks at the original guy, Hippocrates, Galen. They were not holding hands. They were like generals on a battlefield.
Right.
They treated soldiers with gangrene, sepsis, massive trauma. Hippocrates literally describes medicine as a martial art of the body.
Martial art.
Yes. It was violent because the world was violent. Riker contrasts this with Florence Nightingale. He really goes after her legacy.
Yeah, that surprised me. Nightingale is usually seen as the absolute saint of modern medicine.
Well, Riker argues that Nightingale shifted the entire metric of success. Before her, the barber surgeons focused on cutting out the rot, doing the hard, agonizing work required to save a life, regardless of how much the patient screamed.
It was purely about the result.
Exactly. Nightingale introduced the nursing framework, which prioritizes comfort and validating pain. Riker calls it a gynocentric fantasy that has bled the warrior spirit completely out of medicine.
So it is the difference between asking, does this hurt, versus, I am going to cut this out so you do not die. Stop complaining.
Precisely. And he links this shift in mindset to hygiene, too. He talks about the mikveh, the ancient Jewish ritual bath. That was hygiene as law. It was religious order. You washed because God demanded order. Now we have TikTok skincare routines, 10-step serums. Riker says that is hygiene as vanity, as a performance. The mikveh was about submission to a higher law, but modern hygiene is just about self-obsession.
It is a really fascinating cultural critique wrapped in a medical history.
It is.
But let's get to the stuff that made me stop and reread the page. The barbaric technologies. Rager talks about fasting, which I think we are all pretty familiar with, but then he goes straight into bloodletting. And I have to be honest, that is where I start to get really skeptical.
Let's start with fasting, because his take is very different. Most people today fast to lose a few pounds, or because a fitness influencer told them to. Raker says fasting is a weapon.
A weapon for what?
For hematologic mastery. He brings up the Navy SEALs who endure 48-hour food denial. They do not do that to fit into a swimsuit. They do it for mental clarity under extreme duress.
Makes sense.
And the Roman legionnaires, they ate one heavy meal at night.
So the whole intermittent fasting trend is actually just how ancient soldiers lived.
Right. But the mechanism Riker focuses on is the fire mind. He argues that when you deny yourself food, you break the dopamine slavery of modern snacking. You become sharp, dangerous, focused. It is about killing the part of you that constantly needs comfort.
He calls it eating like a king versus eating like a peasant.
Yeah.
He lays out this regal plate diet.
Yes. 70% animal fat and protein. We are talking bone marrow, organ meats, the stuff that builds testosterone, 20% ancestral plants, and 10% fermented drinks.
Heavy duty.
He says if you are not eating for power, you are eating for servitude. The peasant eats the grain. The king eats the cow.
Okay, I can get behind the steak and the fasting. That makes sense from an evolutionary standpoint. But bloodletting, come on. We are talking about leeches, draining blood. Isn't that the definition of archaic, anti-science nonsense? I mean, didn't they basically kill George Washington doing that?
This is where Riker gets really provocative.
Yep.
And we need to look at the biochemistry he presents to understand his angle. He defends it. He calls it iron management.
Iron management. Okay, convince me. Or at least tell me what he says.
Here is the science he presents. Iron is a heavy metal. It rusts. In the body, excess iron causes massive oxidative stress. It literally rusts you from the inside out. Now, women have a natural mechanism to offload iron every month through menstruation.
Right.
Men do not. We are iron traps. We just accumulate it. Riker argues that high iron levels, specifically ferritin, are linked to inflammation, heart disease, and what he calls thick blood.
Thick blood, that sounds like a metaphor.
It's not a metaphor. He is talking about actual viscosity. When blood is thick with ferritin and red blood cells, it moves slower. It puts enormous strain on the heart. But more importantly, Riker argues it leads to thick thinking.
Stagnant blood leads to stagnant minds.
Exactly. He argues that ancient physicians were not superstitious, they were observant. They saw that when they reduced blood volume in a high-pressure inflamed man, he actually got better.
So when they were bloodletting, they were essentially doing an oil change, lowering the pressure and dumping the rust.
That is his argument. And regarding George Washington, Riker argues he did not die because of bloodletting technology. He died because of malpractice.
How so?
Panicked doctors took too much, too fast. Something like 40% of his blood volume in 12 hours. Riker says that was user error, not a system failure. Used correctly, he argues blood donation is the modern equivalent and is absolutely essential for men to stay sharp.
That is a wild reframe. It completely flips the narrative of ignorant ancients just guessing in the dark.
And that brings us to the mind. Because if the body has been captured by comfort and inflammation, Riker argues the mind has been captured by the therapy state.
This was section 3 of the book, and man does he hate modern therapy. He basically says the mental health industry is designed to domesticate men. But isn't that a dangerous message, telling men not to seek help?
Again, we are just breaking down his thesis here, and he frames it very differently. He calls it the war on stoicism. He argues that modern psychology pathologizes masculinity itself. If you are stoic, you are repressing. If you are competitive, you are toxic. If you want to act instead of sit around and talk about it, they say you have avoidant personality disorder.
There was that incredible example about the British Army. Tell that story, because that really stuck with me.
Yes. In 2018, the British Army actually dropped mandatory mental health screenings for new recruits. Now, why would they do that?
You would think they would want to catch any problems early on.
You would think. But it turned out the screenings were pre-traumatizing the soldiers. They were taking healthy, resilient 18-year-old men and asking them 50 times if they were sad, if they were anxious, if they felt broken.
Wow.
By the end of the process, these men started believing they actually were broken. Riker calls this manufacturing fragility.
That is terrifying.
Yeah.
It's like the system is a virus that installs the sickness it claims to cure.
Riker suggests an alternative. He talks about Praxa, a men's group he advises. They have a strict no whine rule. For 30 days, you cannot complain. Not about the weather, not about your job, not about pain.
I feel like I would feel that in the first hour. Most guys would.
Most modern men absolutely do. But Riker says the goal is not to suppress emotion. It is to transmute it into action. Men gather not to cry and hold hands, but to debate virtue and fix things. It is action over introspection.
Speaking of introspection, he has a very specific take on psychedelics or entheogens. Because usually when I hear about ayahuasca or mushrooms now, it is all about healing trauma and emotional release.
And Riker says that is the left capturing a warrior technology. He points to the Vikings, the Berserkers, or the Vedic rishis. They did not take these substances to feel safe. They took them to see the jaguar in the dark.
To prepare for battle.
Exactly. To gain dominance and clarity. To dissolve the fear of death, not to wallow in childhood trauma. He calls the modern healing circle a New Age circus. He believes these substances are tools for sharpening the will.
It is a recurring theme here. Everything that used to be a tool for strength medicine, hygiene, psychedelics, has been turned into a tool for softness. Which leads us to perhaps the most controversial part of the entire deep dive, the institutional erasure of the father.
This is critical to his framework. Riker argues for the Deuteronomic order.
Deuteronomic, that refers to the biblical book of laws, right?
Yes. He is referring to a historical structure where the father is the physician and the lawgiver of the home. He holds the ultimate authority and the ultimate responsibility.
But we do not live in that world anymore. Not even close.
No, and Riker names the villains who he claims destroyed it. He points directly to the AMA, the American Medical Association, and specifically the Flexner Report of 1910.
The Flexner Report. I heard this mentioned in some alternative health circles. Break it down. What was it?
It was a report funded by Andrew Carnegie and John D. Rockefeller. Now, the official story is that they wanted to standardize medical schools to improve science. And sure, there was some snake oil being sold back then.
Yeah.
But Riker argues this was not about better science. It was a corporate takeover.
How so?
The report recommended closing down any medical school that did not adhere to a specific drug-based patentable curriculum. Over half of American medical schools were shut down. And who got hit the hardest?
Let me guess. The alternative guys.
Exactly. The schools teaching herbalism, folk medicine, and the schools that trained midwives.
So they did not just win the scientific argument, they literally burned down the competition's schools.
Exactly. They centralized medicine into a massive bureaucracy that required expensive licensing. This stripped away family sovereignty over health. You could no longer heal your own children, you had to go to the expert.
The statistic that hit me the hardest was about home births.
Right. In the 1940s, 90% of births were at home, usually with the father present and involved. By 1960, 1%.
Wow.
And the father was pushed out into the hospital hallway. Riker quotes the propaganda slogan used at the time: "Better a dead baby at home than a live one in a hospital."
That is brutal marketing.
It was highly effective. It turned a natural family event into a medical emergency that only an institution could manage. The father went from being a protector to a spectator.
And we have to tread carefully here, but we are just reporting what is in the book. We have to bridge from birth to the third rail, abortion and abortifacients. Riker goes there, and it is uncomfortable.
He does. And again, he comes at it from an angle you just do not hear in the mainstream debate. He is not arguing the morality of it in a religious sense at all. He is arguing strictly about power and control.
He mentions specific ancient herbs,
Right.
right? Like pennyroyal and silphium.
Right. He says ancient men knew about these things. They understood abortifacients. They managed reproduction with women. But modern laws and the medical system have completely erased male agency.
He calls it the abortifacient paradox.
The paradox, according to Riker, is that in the modern gynocratic system, a woman has total bodily autonomy. She can end a pregnancy without consulting the father, but the man has zero financial autonomy. Meaning, if the child is born, the state forces him to pay, regardless of his choice. He has the financial responsibility of a father, but the authority of a stranger. Riker argues this is not equality, it is asymmetry. It is a system designed to strip men of leverage while burdening them with the bill.
It is heavy stuff. It really paints a picture of a man who is totally cornered by the system, biologically, psychologically, and legally. So what is the actual solution? Section 5 is the red pill protocol. How does he say we reclaim this sovereignty?
Well, it starts with recognizing exactly where you are. Riker uses the pull ladder.
Okay, walk us through the ladder.
The blue pill is compliance. You trust the doctor, you eat the food pyramid, you take the meds, you just sleepwalk through life. The white pill is denial or despair.
The doomers.
Right. You know the system is broken, you know the food is poison, but you just watch videos about it and say, it is over. You do absolutely nothing.
And the red pill.
The red pill is responsibility, it is action, it is stopping the NPC behavior and taking control.
And he uses Andrew Tate as an example here, specifically regarding testosterone.
He does. He mentions Tate's blood work showing testosterone levels at 980 nanograms per deciliter. Riker frames this not just as a health metric, but as a political act.
A political act. How?
Because he calls it a declaration of war against a system that wants men weak. If the system wants you fat, docile, low T, and addicted to SSRIs, then being physically strong, aggressive, and chemically optimized is inherently revolutionary.
So high testosterone is literally an act of rebellion.
In Riker's view, absolutely.
And he brings this back to social habits, too. Alcohol. This was surprising because usually health books tell you to stop drinking entirely.
Riker differentiates between solitary drinking and ritual drinking. He calls alcohol ancestral technology. Think of Ben Franklin or the ancient Roman symposiums.
Or the Danes with their concept of hig.
Yes, men drinking together. He argues that solitary drinking, the guy having a beer alone in the dark, is addiction and despair. That is the white pill. But drinking in a group with ritual bonds men. It builds loyalty.
Yeah.
He actually links the loss of these male drinking rituals to the rise in male suicide. We need to drink together to reduce suicide and build loyalty.
It is the cheers effect versus the guy drinking alone. Connection, not control, stops the breakdown.
Precisely. Riker's message is pretty clear. The world is broken, and it is broken specifically to break you. The institutions are not coming to save you.
So we have covered the history, the biology, the psychology, and the sociology. It is a really comprehensive takedown of the modern world.
And his only way out is to stop playing by their rules, to reject the patient label and become the general.
Lead or be led. That is the final prescription.
It is. And it leaves the listener with a very stark choice. You can remain a client of the insurance companies and the pharmaceutical giants entities that literally profit from your chronic illness, or you can look backward to move forward. You can use the ancient tools like fasting, pain tolerance, hierarchy, and brotherhood to rebuild what was lost.
It is not about nostalgia. It is about survival.
Riker puts it best at the very end. The world does not need more quiet men. It needs men who speak like thunder.
That is a powerful note to end on. Speak like thunder. Look, if this deep dive sparked something in you, if you are feeling that fire mind kicking in, you need to get the full manual. We barely scratched the surface of the herbal protocols, the specific dosages for herbs like wormwood and yarrow, and the deep history of trepanation.
We really did not do it justice. There is so much detail in the book that you just need to read for yourself.
So go to Amazon Kindle or Google Play Books right now, search for Ancient Medicine by Conrad Riker, buy it, read it, apply it, and if you want to stay updated on the legacy cell updates he talks about, you need to follow him directly.
That is at Conrad Riker on Substack and Twitter or X. He releases updates there that do not make it into the mainstream feeds.
Do it. Do not be a white pillar who just listens to this and does nothing. Take action.
And while you are taking action, remind them what else to do.
Oh, absolutely. Smash that like button and subscribe to our show. It helps us keep bringing you these forbidden manuals. And, thinking about all this, if the system really does profit off your sickness and compliance, maybe the ultimate act of defiance isn't just getting healthy. Maybe it's building parallel institutions that outlive them entirely. Just something to chew on. Thanks for listening, and until next time, speak like thunder. We will see you in the next deep dive.